Hello guys, this is going to be my short guide or first impressions on the item system in Season 14 for Emax Nasus. So I'm going to be talking about starting items, boots, and then there's two builds. One's like a tanky build, one's a damage build, and then I'm going to talk about some situational items that go into either build, and then I'm also going to go into here and show you some runes that I'm going to be taking when playing these builds. So first off, let's talk about the starting items. This is unchanged. We're starting Doran's Ring every single game. You need to be starting some form of item with AP as Emax Nasus to make your adaptive go into AP, and there is no better option than Doran's Ring. It gives you everything you need. It gives you sustain. It gives you like mana sustain. It gives you damage. Yeah, that's great. It gives you health as well. Onto the boots. Once again, we're going to be taking Lucidity boots every single game. These did get nerfed. They got 50 gold cheaper, but they lost 5 haste. Now 5 haste is worth a lot more than 50 gold, so that is a nerf. However, we still need them because they're not the only thing in the game where haste got nerfed, and haste is pretty much nerfed across the board. So the value of these comparatively actually got a lot higher. Like, we need them to make up for all the haste we've lacked or lost in other areas. For example, the Trinity Mythic passive, and just it's harder to find haste on items in general. Okay, so the first build I want to talk about is the tank build. So for starters on the tank build, I'm going to be getting a tier early, and this is going to remove all of my mana issues. Then the first item is going to be Iceborne, and from there I'm completing the tier into Thimble. So for me, I consider this Iceborne tier as one item. It's a 3,000 gold item that gives you 300 health, 50 armor, 15 haste, a Sheen proc that slows, and 500 mana. So it's a really solid 3,000 gold item if you consider this tier plus Iceborne. Then you complete your Thimble Winter Second, and as you complete it, it will be finished. I'll talk about why that is when I get into the runes, but we're going to use some runes for this build that make it stronger. But this costs 2,000 gold because the item got buffed to be 2,400 gold, but we've already bought the tier and factored that into our Iceborne price. So effectively this is a 2,000 gold item, and this core makes you incredibly tanky. You can spam your E, you can spam your W. Really good in team fights. Lots of haste. Haste on boots, haste on one item, haste on two item. 30 haste between these two items. So yeah, really, really good. Now, the next couple of items, if we need magic resist with this build, we're going to be buying Spirit Visage instead of Abyssal. You can still go Abyssal, and Abyssal is good, but I prefer Spirit Visage in this build. We get haste on the item, we get more healing from our passive, but most importantly, we get more shielding from our Thimble Winter. And then we get more healing from the next item I'm going to talk about, which is the new item, Unending Despair. So we're going to buy Unending Despair, and this is like our core 4-item build. All of these items have really good synergy together. If you don't know what Unending Despair does, every 7 seconds it does like the old Jack Show effect that it used to do when you got to full stacks, where it drains a bunch of health from every champion around you. So it deals some base damage and some damage based on your max HP, and then it heals you for 250% of the damage that it dealt. And it does that every 7 seconds. The item also gives health, armor, and haste, so it's a perfect stat line for Nasus. So with this build, we become unbelievably tanky. Our Spirit Visage is bolstering the healing from Unending Despair. It's bolstering the shielding from Thimble Winter. Iceborne can proc the Thimble, but most of the time our Wither's going to be proccing Thimble, but either way, this is what the build's going to look like. And for runes for this build, there's 2 pages that I'm running. One is the standard Phase Rush, where I'm running Phase Rush, Mana Flow, Transcendent Scorch. I'm taking Haste Shard, Adaptive Force, and Armor. Now, you might be thinking, when you go Haste Shard, you don't clear the wave with your E at level 5 and 6. Well, now it's just level 6 after the Doran's Ring buffs a few patches ago. But you don't clear the wave with your E at level 6, but we do, because in the off tree, we're going to take Ghost Poro, and we're going to use this to gain some extra AP and some extra vision, keeping us safe. But more importantly, we're going to take Ingenious Hunter. Now, when this item is stacked, it gives 50 item haste. Most of the time, for most of the game, you're going to probably be sat somewhere around 35 or 40. item haste, or 45, you know, it's going to build up. But once you get to 50, your Iceborne's around a 1 second cooldown, your Thimble Winter Shield is a 5 second cooldown, and your Unending Despair, like AoE Drain Jackshow effect, happens every 4.5 seconds. So the synergy with your Ingenious Hunter in this build is crazy. And the Ingenious Hunter is also going to make your tier stack faster, which is why it's always complete by the time we finish our 5,000 gold 2-core. So this is the tank build. This is the build with Sheen. The next build I'm going to show you doesn't run Sheen. But yes, this is maybe my favourite build. I'm not quite sure, because there is the other build that I'm about to show you. And the other build rushes Liandry. So actually, before I jump into this Liandry build, there's another rune page. Sometimes, if I feel like I don't need phase rush, and there's kind of like a brawly champion, like a Riven, for example, I wouldn't run phase rush in the Riven matchup, but I would want bone plating. How I arrive at that is I grab Grasp, I take bone plating, and I'll take Revitalize to gain extra heals and shields, which is really good with the build, obviously. And then I'll also take Shield Bash, and we'll proc this a lot, because every 5 seconds we're getting this Thimble Shield, and we'll get a nice Shield Bash. You can take Demolish, but a lot of the time you're not going to be able to proc it as Emax Nasus. But you can also take that if you wanted to, and if you really wanted to, you could also take Font of Life and heal your allies, because you're going to be spreading Iceborne slows and a lot of withers. So all three of these runes are viable, but I think it's cool that Shield Bash is now also viable on Nasus with this build. So, moving on to the AP build. Not really AP, but it's the damage build, and you rush Liandry. Because we do this, we don't need to take Ghost Power in our runes, because we're buying AP on our first back, so our wave clear is always phenomenal. And once you finish this item, you will notice a massive spike of damage. It's kind of like Demonic was last season, except we also get the new Haunting Guys effect, which gives us % increasing damage the longer we stay in combat. And this really stacks up on our ultimate, and your ult and your E will just do so much damage. From there, we're building the old build of Frozen Heart versus AD and Abyssal versus AP, and this is going to be your core. There's one other item that I want to talk about with this build, and that is Spear of Shojin. You'll get a lot of haste, and it kind of functions well with your Liandry's No Sheen playstyle, where you're playing off your E and your ult, because the new Shojin, it gives you like 35 haste on your basic abilities, which is crazy, and it also gives you a stacking damage bonus on your abilities, so this works really nice in this build. So I like these 4 items in this build and these 4 items in this build. You'll notice that Trinity Force is going sort of, it's kind of dropped. The reason for that is that it costs as much as it did last patch, but it doesn't have the mythic passive, and it doesn't have the threefold strike passive, and I was doing so much damage with the threefold strike passive. Losing that completely off the item just makes it so much worse. It used to be a perfect item, and now it's just kind of eh. And the other part is that Sheen got nerfed as well individually, so that also makes Trinity worse. So runes for the damage build, pretty much every single game I'm going to be running this page. With haste, you take your phase rush, mana flow, transcendent, scorch as usual, and then like bone plating, unflinching. In really good matchups like Gangplank, you can go bone plating and demolish, and you can also go airy. So airy's still an option, you can still consider that, but most of the time it's going to be phase rush, and most of the time it's going to be bone plating, unflinching. I'm probably going to have to update this video when the stat shards change next week, and unflinching is also changing. So I'll have to experiment with that, but for now, it's going to remain mostly the same. So those are the runes that I'll take with this build. In very easy matchups, with this build, you can opt for phase rush, like this regular page, but you can swap into triple tonic approach velocity. So this is something I might consider versus Gangplank, versus Kale, versus... my matchup guide still stands for the most part in Season 14. So versus the matchups that I said were easy, I might take this. This gives you your maxed wither at level 12 instead of level 13. So level 9, 10, 11, 12, you're 1 point in wither further than you would be previously. And then you get your Q maxed out faster as well. I think this item's actually really, really good. And then approach velocity speaks for itself. You get 15% move speed towards champions that you wither. These runes are very strong. So the last thing to talk about is some situational items that I'll buy in either of the two builds. The first is Anathema's Chains, same as last time. If there's one guy who's really fed, or if they're playing like a Protect Deity carry comp, like a Cogmore, like Hyper Carry, and you can keep this guy withered with the extra Tenacity Shred and take 30% less damage from them, and it gives good stats for Nasus, yeah, this item's great. If they're very heavy into AP, you can grab Force of Nature. This item is now basically a giant magic resist stat stick if you need it. There's also Jack Show. This item goes really well like here. In the last slot of this tank build. It just makes you very tanky. It multiplies all your other resistances. This includes the resistances from your ultimate, by the way. So yeah, it will multiply all your resistances. Randuin's is your anti-crit item. If they're playing like Gangplank mid, Gangplank top, Yone mid, and an AD carry, or you know something like this, you're going to want to pick up a Randuin's because it's anti-crit. That's what it does. And then the last item that I'm going to talk about, every other item on here I think is not worth picking up on Nasus now. But the last item is going to be Sundered Sky. This item, it's basically kind of like old Sunderer. You bonk them and you heal, and it has a 6-second cooldown per target. It's okay in either build. I prefer it in this build particularly because we have Spirit Visage amping it. Sometimes we have Revitalize amping it, but we also have Ingenious Hunter, which will take it from a 6-second cooldown to like a 4-second cooldown, 3 point something. So it's a lot better in the tank build than it is in the damage build. So I'll probably leave this here, but it's also situational, so I'll put it there. But yeah, that is all of the items. I don't think I would ever buy any other item right now. Maybe Sterax if I really needed Tenacity, because this item now brings Tenacity. Maybe into something that particularly slows me, like they're extremely reliant on slows, like, I don't know, Olaf, but I banned that champion anyway, but you get the point. Maybe I would build Deadman's because it now has the Swiftness Boots passive on it, where it reduces how much you get slowed by. This could also be pretty good into the Aatrox matchup, actually, because it would allow you to walk out of his W a lot easier. But yeah, aside from that, I don't see any items that I would ever consider building, and so that's going to be the guide. So thank you for watching, guys, and I look forward to making more Season 14 Nasus videos in the future. Bye-bye.